Okay, so we're going to talk about the sum and difference formulas. Remember, you will get the formula sheet on your test. You don't have to memorize them. You just have to know how to use them. So when we're using the sum and difference formulas, notice that there is a plus and a minus. You follow the order that you need. So if you were adding things to get a number that is on the unit circle, you would follow everything on the top of the equation. If you were subtracting, you would follow everything on the bottom equation. The thing with sign is it follows the same sign, so this one is same signs. Cosine is going to be opposite in sign. So if we're adding to get the number we need for our unit circle values, then on the right side with the long formula, we're going to be subtracting. Tangent, the top part follows. But the bottom will be opposite in sign. So this one is same over the opposite sign on the bottom. Again, also following the formula that's given to you. So as long as you can read the formula sheet, you're fine. So let's look at our first example. We've got cosine of 15. Okay, so we're going to use our cosine formula. And we're going to find two unit circle values that add or subtract to give that value of 15. So the two unit circle values that add up to that are going to be 45 minus 30. You could have also done 60 minus 45, right? There are multiple values that would give you 15, but I just chose these. And then we're going to follow the pattern. We've got cosine of 45, cosine of 30, opposite in sign because this is cosine, so we get a plus, sine of 45, sine of 30, and then we evaluate. So the cosine of 45 is the square root of 2 over 2. The cosine of 30 is the square root of 3 over 2. The sine of 45 is the square root of 2 over 2. And the sine of 30 is 1/2. Notice that the bases will multiply to give us 4 for both. And then in the top we get the square root of 3 on the square root of 6, because the square root of 3 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 6, plus the square root of 2, and that would be our final answer for the first one. You're going to see an answer that looks similar to this, just with some positives and negatives, very, very often when doing your sum and difference formulas for sine and cosine. This one is tangent. We can use the same values that we used before. So we're going to use 45 minus 30. And we're going to follow our tangent formula. Okay, and it's minus, so we're following everything that's on the bottom. So we get tan of 45 minus tan of 30 over 1 plus tan of 45 times tan of 30. So here we're going to get some fractions, so we got to make sure we're doing good math with our fractions. So tan of 45 is 1. Tangent of 30 is the square root of 3 over 3. And in the bottom we got 1 plus just the square root of 3 over 3, because 1 times the square root of 3 over 3 is just the square root of 3 over 3. Personally, I do not like dealing with fractions, so I like to multiply them out. So I look at my fraction bases, and for this one it's fairly easy. I'm just going to multiply the top and the bottom by 3. So I get 3 minus the square root of 3 over 3 plus the square root of 3. So now we have this dilemma of having this root in the bottom, but we can't just multiply by the square root of 3 because that does nothing for us, because then we'd get the square root of 3 with the 3 there at the bottom. So we have to multiply by what's called the conjugate. So we take what's on the bottom and we multiply by its opposite. So 3 minus the square root of 3. This is going to get rid of that radical in the bottom. And whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top as well to keep it even. So From there, we're going to get, okay, so now we got to FOIL the top. So we've got 3 times 3, which gives us 9, and 3 times negative square root of 3. Then we've got negative square root of 3 times 3. And negative square root of 3 times negative square root of 3, which gives us minus 3. And in the bottom, we get 3 times 3, which is 9. And if we were to FOIL as normal, okay, the middle part would just cancel out, which is why we did the conjugate. So I'm just going to skip to the square root of 3 times negative square root of 3, which gives us minus 3. Up here, this 3 what should have been positive. I apologize there. Negative times negative is indeed positive. Okay, so then we get 9 plus 3 is 12, and negative 3 minus 3, which is 6, square root of 3 over 6. And then we simplify because they can all be divided by 6. So we get 2 minus the square root of 3 as our final answer there. So here we're trying to find the sine of pi over 12. So we got to find things that add up. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 12 and you're going to find the factors of 12, not including 1 in itself. So 2, 3, 4, and 6 are our factors. Now, if none of those add or subtract to the value in the top, which up here is technically a 1, then we would keep going. And so I would do 4, 6, 8, 12, and then, 6, 9, 12, 18, until I found a value. Now for us, the value was there at the front. We could do 2 and 3 or 4 and 6. I'm going to choose 2 and 3. And those become the top part of our fraction. So it's going to be 2 pi over 12. Sorry, 3 pi over 12 got to go first because I got to get minus. So 3 pi over 12 minus 2 pi over 12. So that gives me sine of pi over 4, if I simplify them all, minus pi over 6. So then I'm just going to follow the sign at the top, and I'm doing minus, so I'm following everything on the bottom. So I've got sine of pi over 4, cosine of pi over 6, minus cosine of pi over 4, sine of pi over 6. And then I evaluate those. So sine of pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2. Cosine of pi over 6 is the square root of 3 over 2. Cosine of pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2. And sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. So here we're going to get the square root of 6 minus the square root of 2 over 4. Again, we see those values a lot. Again, minus plus is going to be the difference there. So here I'm talking about condensing and instead of expanding. So all I want is for us to go backwards. So I'm saying this is sine, cosine. So I'm thinking, okay, this is sine, cosine here at the beginning, cosine, sine. So it's following that pattern. So I'm going back to sine. And this is my u and this is my v. So I've got 42 and 12 in here. And then I look here and it's a minus. So for sine, minus was on the bottom. So minus on the bottom here. And I'm going to do sine of 42 minus 12, which is going to give me the sine of 30, which means I'm not done because 30 is on the unit circle. So the sine of 30 is going to be 1/2, and that would be our final answer there if we were choosing to condense this problem. Okay, and here is the verifying part of the notes. Okay, so you just got to plug things in until you get what's on the other side, essentially. So I've got tangent of pi over 4 plus theta. So I'm following this one at the bottom. So I've got tan of pi over 4 plus tan of theta over 1 minus tan of pi over 4 tan theta. Tan of pi over 4 equals 1. So 1 plus tan theta in the top. And in the bottom, we got 1 times tan theta there, so it's just going to be 1 minus tan theta, and we have gotten what is on the right, so we have verified that one. Okay, so here we've got sine of 2 pi minus theta equals negative sine. So again, I'm going to follow the equation that's over here on the right for sine. So sine of 2 pi cosine of theta minus cosine of 2 pi sine of theta. Sine of 2 pi is 0. So if this is 0 and we still have a cosine of theta, those are going to cancel. And then cosine of 2 pi is going to be 1. So 1 times sine just leaves us with sine of theta. So we are left with negative sine theta for our answer, which is what we needed on the right. For this one, again, you're just following the pieces of cosine, but now we're doing it twice. So it's going to be kind of long. We've got cosine of 60 cosine of x plus sine of 60 cosine, nope, sine, sorry, of x. So that was the first part. Then we're going to do the second. So plus cosine of 60 cosine of x. It's a plus there, so now it's a minus. Sine of 60 sine of x. So notice that we have a positive sine 60 sine of x and a negative. So those are going to cancel each other out. And we're left with the cosine of 60. And the cosine of 60 is 1/2. Then we have cosine of x plus. Then we got cosine of 60 again, so 1/2 cosine of x. And 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1/2, so we're left with just the cosine of x. So now we're going to talk about right triangle trig. So first step is reading your statement that they've given you. Okay, so this is saying that alpha is going to be between 0 and pi over 2, which is in quadrant 1. And then it's saying that beta is between pi over 2 and pi, which means it's in quadrant number 2. So we have to keep in mind our quadrants and what's positive and what's negative in each. So for alpha, we're going to have one triangle. And we know that tangent is 3 over 4, so that is y over x, and our other side would be 5. If you need to get 5, remember we use Pythagorean theorem if you don't know those numbers off the top of your head. Cosine of beta is negative 1/2, so that means negative 1 is here because we're in quadrant number 2, and 2 goes here. And we would have to find the other side. So using Pythagorean theorem, you would get that this other side is the square root of 3. Okay, and now we're going to follow our formulas. So we've got sine of alpha cosine beta plus cosine alpha sine beta. So this is my alpha triangle and this is my beta. So I'm going to take the alpha values. So sine of the alpha triangle is 3/4. Cosine of the beta triangle is negative 1/2. Cosine of the alpha is 4/5. And sine of the beta is square root of 3 over 2. I apologize. Sine of alpha is not 3/4, it's 3/5. It's y over h there. Okay. So then we're going to have 3 times negative 1, which is a negative 3, plus 4 square root of 3. We can't combine those because one has a root, all over 10. And that would be our final answer for sine of alpha plus beta. This time we're looking at cosine. It's the same triangle, so I'm just going to redraw those on this page. So for cosine, remember cosine is cosine of alpha, cosine, beta, opposite sign, so minus sine alpha, sine beta. So cosine of alpha is going to be 4/5. Cosine of beta is negative 1/2. Minus sine of alpha, 3/5. Sine of beta, square root of 3 over 2. And then again, we multiply across. So we get negative 4 minus 3 square root of 3 over 10. Tangent is going to be the slightly more difficult one because, again, we get fractions. Like I said, I like to get rid of the fractions by multiplying, and I will show you that when we get there. So we're going to have 1 plus, so our formula is tangent of alpha, tangent of beta. So we're going to have tan alpha plus tan beta all over 1 minus tan alpha tan beta. And we're going to plug in our numbers. So tangent of the alpha one is 3/4. Tangent of the beta is negative square root of 3 over 1 minus 3/4 times negative square root of 3. Now to get rid of this, because there's only one fraction, all we have to do is multiply the top and the bottom by 4. So we're going to get 3 minus 4 root 3 over 4. We got a minus and a minus, so plus 3 root 3. Okay. Okay, then we've got a radical on the bottom, so we got to multiply by the conjugate. So we're going to get 4 minus 3 root 3. 4 minus 3 root 3. All right, so now we get 3 times 4, which is 12. And we get 3 times negative root 3, which is negative 9 root 3. Negative 4 root 3 times 4 is negative 16 root 3. And then negative 4 root 3 times negative 3 root 3 is going to be positive 36. On the bottom, we're going to have 16 minus 27. Okay. So combine like terms. So 12 plus 36 gives us 48 minus 25 root 3 over negative 11 for our final answer. Again, this was the video on sum and difference. Okay, so this goes with that homework page.